All right, what's good, real estate family? So there's a common perception that it is much easier to work with sellers than it is buyers. Is that true? Well, it really depends on the individual. Me and my experience, I'm not going to sit here and say that every seller I work with has been much easier than a buyer, because there are stubborn sellers out there. In fact, majority of sellers are stubborn because they want more than their house is worth. A lot of them have a hard time understanding that their house is going to be looked at as an individual and not only as a collective. It will be looked at as a collective by an appraiser based on the sales in the area, yes, but it will still be assessed as an individual based on how well you've taken care of your house. And because most homeowners do not get an inspection like 2 to 5 years of living in the home, they don't know what's really going on with their house and how it's going to be assessed and analyzed by a professional inspector and a professional appraiser. So when these things happen, most sellers don't know what's going on with their house until an inspection is conducted. Then they get this report of issues with it that are major most of the time. And then they're like, well, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. Yeah, well, you should have taken care of your house before you listed it. And because most sellers don't do like a pre-inspection, if you will, they get blindsided by this information, and now they get into their emotions. So at times, sellers can be worse than a buyer. It really depends on the individual. Now, if you have a seller that's willing to be counseled, and the same applies to a buyer, then yes, the process could be easier, but it depends. Now, the reason why a lot of realtors are saying this is because that cliche saying, buyers are liars, as if sellers aren't, they're saying that because you have to put in like compete with 100 other offers on a home, right? Multiple offers. And then if you're representing the seller, you're in a position where you can only choose one. So it's easier in that sense on the surface to be able to say, I don't have to worry about no other realtors, only the offers coming in, and me and my seller choose which one's the best, right? But when you represent a buyer, you have to consider that there's other offers out there and you have to stand out over those other realtors, and it can get frustrating when you get beat out. So that's why people think it's easy to work with sellers for the most part. Now, there are a few things that a lot of people are missing. Once you get an offer accepted, remember, as a seller, it's harder for you to kind of negotiate stuff, especially because you don't know what's going on with your house. And when a buyer is the one paying for the inspection, they're going to have more knowledge about your house than you did. So now that gives them a little bit more leverage in negotiating. So now the price that you listed at, you might have to come down on it because you didn't take the time to see what was going on with your house before listing, which is what most sellers do. So they're kind of at a disadvantage of that. And also, as a seller, it's harder in Florida anyway to back out of the contract, because a buyer can back out before inspection period is up, or if they have an appraisal contingency in and the seller doesn't want to lower it because it didn't appraise at the price that they listed it, then the buyer can back out on that. So there's a lot of room for the buyers to back out. So at times it can be harder in some aspects to work for a seller, especially if the seller is very stubborn. So hope this video helps. It really comes down to the individual.